Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you by Growmark FS. Keeping up with the latest in ag is a challenge, to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic, grain, and energy solutions bored of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on the latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you'll get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. Well, as we wrapped up the market trade for the week on Friday, we saw an extremely strong day in the wheat markets. That spilled over into the other grains as well. The soy complex found a lot of good strength. Corn was up moderately. Mixed day in livestock. Energies, crude oil was higher. We have plenty to run through and discuss. Joining us now, pleased to have him back on the show with us, our good friend DuWayne Bosse of Bolt Marketing in Britain, South Dakota. DuWayne, good to catch up with you, sir. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, you too. No, absolutely. Weather's been a little bit better and days are getting longer. That's always a big thing when you live this far north.
I was going to say, that calendar just keeps inching closer and closer to spring planting. I mean, I know we're, in February, but man, April right around the corner for many folks across the northern tier. And, we might even see some planters rolling in Texas and Louisiana here in a couple of weeks. So that spring plantings, it's coming up real quick on us here as the season. We kind of move out of winter and try to get into spring anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. Everyone likes it. Spring, the new beginnings. And, when it comes to farming, I know we all think the same. It's that clean slate and perfect year. And we always set our expectations way too high because it usually seems like about April 30th, I'm going, I can't wait till next year. But anyway, right now I still got that clean slate and I'm pretty excited.
Well, thinking about that clean slate, part of it is the markets too, which we don't necessarily get a clean slate with those, but we do get plenty of market news to shift things one way or another. And, DuWayne, since last time we talked, it's been an interesting market. It's been kind of range bound, it feels like, for quite some time. But then Friday, we got a big move to the upside, led by the wheat markets. I know some chatter from Russia, a 5% cut in oil production. It seemed like that, buoyed the crude oil market, which in turn supported some of the grains and oil seeds. And then a little more increased tension with Russia-Ukraine's war as we are working into the month of February. It all seemed like that was maybe at least one of the catalysts here to the move higher here, led by the wheat market on Friday.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it really started overnight with the wheat market and starting to rally this morning, then just continued. And man, I love the closes today too. We can get one day pops and dips, right? But it's how you close. And today felt really good the way the wheat market closed. Yeah, tensions in Ukraine are definitely on the rise. Russia's been lining up troops for past couple of weeks. And of course, we're sending some tanks over to help Ukraine with the fight. And I've heard some rumors about February 15th as a big date. I don't know if that's when the Russian troops will be in place to make their advancement. But anyway, tensions are on the rise. Obviously, some more sanctions on Russia, and that led to Russia, like you also mentioned, dipping their crude oil production. They promised they will cut back about 500,000 barrels per day starting next month. So that had the crude oil up well. And when you get a rally in the wheat market and the crude oil market, corn was actually just a follower today, but a follower of about up 10 cents. So we'll take it. The chart pattern looks a lot better with a good close. And then as we're getting into the close here, getting some information or rumors anyway that China's in there buying some more U.S. soybeans out of the Gulf for their reserves, which, Jesse, you and I have talked enough. That's one of my big things, that through this COVID deal, China hasn't bought nearly as many beans as prior. But their demand has stayed pretty consistent and steady. So I think their reserves are kind of sucking air a little bit. So I think they're going to need to rebuild their reserves here, especially as they come out of this COVID scare.
Well, that China news you just mentioned, that would make sense as to why we saw a bit of a pop in that bean market too late in the session. I wonder, getting some of that news and rumors into the trade maybe was the catalyst to move us higher. And I know, throughout the day, bean oil was higher, especially even bean meal coming back after Thursday's sharp move. So I would have to think maybe that China chatter was a reason why we moved higher there into the close.
it sure seems like it with the bull spreading action we saw. Honestly, earlier interview, I called soybeans the follower today, and here they are, almost leading into the close. Like say, yeah, I think there's definitely some truth behind this rumor that, is China still buying from Brazil? Absolutely. Are they going to gobble up that monster crop? Absolutely. But they continue to buy any of ours, Jesse. And remember, we don't have much of a cushion left in old crops. So if our export demand continues to stay strong and the bears are counting on it falling off, well, then it equals higher prices because we don't have a lot. We'd have to ration a little demand. Now, on the flip side of that, of course, our soybean basis is really tanked in the Midwest, at least the northern Midwest anyway for us. It kind of a sign that the export demand has actually drifted away from the PNW, and crushers seem to be getting enough supplies for now. But we had more prevent plant up here, so we'll see how that comes this summer. So, but yeah, very strong close for the bean market.
Circling back to corn, I know you mentioned that as well, kind of the follower, but you were happy with the corn market. A little bit of bull spreading there with the old crop leading the way, trying to get us back up to that 680 mark in March. And then just looking at this corn market, I know it's been pretty range bound, but one has to wonder if we can get some of these news headlines that give us a reason to push back towards 7 there in some of those old crop contracts, and then keep that new crop well over 6, hopefully. I just wonder what this corn market could do here in the short term, DuWayne.
Yeah, hey, it's a great point. I'm happy with the close. I'm glad we're back above 680, but you brought up a very good point. Get back to some of these resistance levels that we've struggled with. Was it 686, 690 area? And then, of course, you got the psychological $7, which we haven't seen for quite a while. I'm a little concerned. It's great that wheat's rallying, but I don't think a wheat rally is enough for us to push above $7 in corn. And actually, the corn story kind of has gotten maybe a little bit more bearish since we talked last. Our export demand isn't anything great. USA failed to correct that by lowering the export demand in this month's report earlier this week. So that just means the bears still have that story out there that eventually we're going to lower U.S. export demand for corn, and probably rightfully so. Yeah, I don't know if I've got the news story. You know me, I've been a bull here, but I don't know if I can tell you that corn has to go above 7. So I like the rally, but if you've got some bushels that you're thinking about letting go soon or some remaining bushels, boy, up against that 686, 688 is probably not a bad spot to sell it.
Well, and two, with corn, base is still fairly strong across parts of the country. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well here, especially as you said, if you got some bushels that it's time to get them gone, you're ready to get rid of them here of old crop. I think that's something interesting to consider as well. And it's going to depend on where you're at, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Every farm's totally different, but yeah, if you've been thinking about selling some bushels, that would be a great time to do it. If the market dips back down to the trend line support back at like 670 or something, and you want to buy it back, then you absolutely can. And the other thing starting to circulate is acreage estimates for this new crop year. Now, on the bearish side of that, people are really pushing corn acres higher and higher, at least on as far as the intentions go. I've seen a lot of guys at 92 million, and I can buy into that. Heard one today of 94 million, and I'm just like, okay, but someone's going to be a big loser if we plant 94 million acres of corn. That'd be about a 5 million acre increase. Remember, winter wheat's already up 3.7 million. So, and Jesse, I'm just flat out running out of acres then for soybeans and spring wheat. So I don't think that can happen. But yeah, that's stories that'll be coming down here, especially this next month. We'll really start trading that acreage report.
Well, and I wonder too, with the acreage side, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you about that as well. I mean, thinking here, nat gas prices have come down. We've seen fertilizer prices come down. What's that going to do here for farmers thinking going into spring? If they're looking at, and maybe they haven't booked some of those fertilizer needs yet, maybe they held off and didn't book last fall or didn't fall apply. Right. What's that going to do for the acreage battle here?
Well, I think that's where that 94 million is coming in, Jess, is I think, lower fertilizer, people didn't book it. If you didn't, you got those questionable acres. It's easier for them to go to corn than right now. It's just, here's my problem with that is we got to back up to last year. Corn was 750 in the spring and we planted 88 million or 89 million. So if higher prices can't do it, I don't know if cheap fertilizer is the only answer. Now, the bears will probably mention that cotton could lose 3 million acres, and maybe more like 2, because honestly, if you own one of those cotton pickers, they're expensive. You're not going to just let it sit in the shed. But that's where you can gain the corn acres, is in the Delta and in North Dakota, as long as they don't have prevent plant. And as I mentioned, prevent plant, I'm kind of the king of prevent plant up here. It seems like Northeast South Dakota to the north of me, we have a lot of it. We just can't get rid of the water in our heavy soils very quickly. Right now, even with the 92 million acres of corn and the acreage estimates everyone have, we've got us lowering our prevent plant acres well below the average, which is 4.2. We've got it down to like a 2.1 is the only way we can make it work. We've only been that low in prevent plant 3 times, Jesse, since 2010. So if we start to change and start to have a wet, cool forecast for spring, well, then that corn acreage could really dip, and then we could rally quite a bit for the new crop. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I know I'm talking both ways. Sell it if you're close because we're up against resistance. But this spring, we could have an acreage battle that could be fairly epic, because I can't calculate all the acres everyone's coming up with magically.
Well, we're having a conversation today with DuWayne Bosse of Bolt Marketing. DuWayne, new crop thoughts here real quick. Corn, beans. Looking at some of the price levels we see there. Any thoughts with some of that forward marketing changed in your mind since we last talked here as we look at the market trade wrapping up the week?
It really hasn't, and I'll definitely throw disclaimers out there that I have no problem with risk management, and that's what people should be doing. If you're looking at your break evens and want to sell, fine. I feel like here I try to just tell them honestly where I think the highs are going to be because of this acreage battle I just mentioned. I'm not really putting price targets. I'm more or less just waiting for a time frame, and that time frame is probably in that April-May time frame. I think we're going to have some sort of acreage battle, a weather scare that gives us a spike higher. And during that time frame, wherever the prices are, that's when I'm going to get very aggressive, Jesse. I will let go the rest of my old crop. I'll hedge a lot of my new crop. Kind of backwards thinking, I know. This isn't, the stereotypical, you sell such percentage as you go along. But, honestly, that time frame of year is usually the best time anyway. So I just think you got to be aggressive. And these last 2 years, Jesse, are not your typical marketing years. Usually when I make a marketing plan, I look at the bottom line, and I'll call it the profit per acre. Well, if I did just that, my job would have been pretty easy. This last couple of years, we would have been done in January and just moved on. But everyone has asked me, well, how high can we get? They want to make as much as they can on these years, and I think we can be a little patient this year.
Well, I know you had brought up the WASDE report earlier from this week. A couple number changes in the U.S. side. I know we got a cut to crush. We got some of the ethanol numbers for corn reduced, but the biggest numbers were South America. We expected that. Nothing changed for Brazil, but Argentina's numbers, core beans coming down. As you look at the South American situation, we know that it's a pretty rough situation in Argentina. And then we're a little bit delayed with rains in Brazil right now for soybean harvest and safrinha planting. So what's your assessment of South America and how that's all playing into the markets here right now?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, USDA did cut some of the production in Argentina for their corn and beans. I think they have more cuts to go there. That crop has really seen a pretty nasty drought when you look at the rainfall totals and the temperatures. I think there's more cuts to come there, and probably why soybean meal is so strong up here, right? Kind of counteracting that. As far as Brazil, they look pretty good, but you're right, there is a little bit of a delay there, and let's watch the weather really closely the next 2 weeks. That safrinha corn crop, it sounds funny to say, well, why are you so bullish corn if they're getting too much rain now? Well, it's because of their climate. That rain season just ends at a certain point. It just really seems to stop raining. So if their corn's pollinating during that time frame, which would be if they got delayed here, that will be a bullish situation. Now, Brazil is selling a ton of corn to China ever since they signed their agreement. And that's not good for us corn producers. That's why our exports are so poor here. So there's a double-edged sword there. If the rains kind of dry off and they can get that corn planted, well, then I'm going to have to change my tune when I'm talking to you next time and go, oh, yeah, by the way, I sold my old crop corn because I freaked out, because that could happen too.
DuWayne, let's move over to livestock. Let's talk about what you're seeing there. This cattle market, fairly quiet futures trade on Friday, but I know we're keeping an eye on that cash market. I know some northern trade was about $4 higher Thursday. Southern trade still in a standoff there, it appears. This cash market for cattle has been really interesting to watch the last week to 10 days or so.
It has, and it's a tough market to follow too, because it's tough to get a lot of details, right? But yeah, I've heard that too, that some cattle traded about $4 higher in the north. But then when I will look at some of the USDA numbers, some of them are around that 158, 159, not that good so far this week. But then I had a smart producer ask me, well, where are those cattle coming from? Because he said, you got some really different feedlot conditions this winter. You got Nebraska that's had a lot of moisture after being dry early, got a lot of mud in those pens. That means those cattle are carrying a lot of mud. So, and packers see that obviously and know that, and they'll just dock those, a different price, of course. So maybe that's the lower USDA trade you see, and then you get the higher up north trade. So it's been all over the board, but you also had cutouts higher this week, slaughter down a little bit again this week, and you had weights down. The slaughter weights were down significantly for steers and heifers. So that'll equal less production. All of it to me points to a bullish market, a little bit higher. We made the new contract highs last week, and we did a little bit of profit taking this week, but we're still very close to those highs. Still looks like a very strong market to me, and a market that will make another leg higher either next week. I'm going to say it'll make the leg higher next week, I think. I think once you and I get done with this interview, they probably start announcing cash cattle trade higher, I'm guessing, since it'll be the afternoon.
That would be typical for a late Friday afternoon. DuWayne, yep. Am I hedging cattle here? Am I waiting to see? What are your thoughts there?
I sure am not going to stop somebody hedging cattle here. These are good profits. The problem with and why I'm hesitating is I tell guys, this market looks good, like I just ranted on about, right? And so it looks like it's got a little bit more. If you're going to wait and not hedge, though, you have to be better disciplined than I am. That means you got to sell the market when it turns and goes the other way. So I'm going to say, yes, it is a good idea to start hedging cattle here. And really what I want to and have been working on is our cow-calf guys for next year. Look at put options, LRP for next year. You don't have to go at the market. You can go under the market a ways if you want. If you want to cheapen it up, because it is a lot of time. So, of course, put options are very expensive that far out. But you're talking, $10. Even if you go under the money, you're talking $10, $15 higher than you just got, and you were happy with those prices. So that's a long time for the cattle market to stay very bullish. That's an industry that has goofy things like pink slime and, Oprah hating meat, just all sorts of dumb things that can happen. So yes, it's time to start hedging some cattle.
On feeder cattle too, I know obviously watching the corn market, watching feed costs here, some really good numbers in that feeder cattle trade as well right now, DuWayne.
Yeah, and like so that's the one I'm really watching. You look out to next year, next November at 214. Boy, that's a darn good ticket right there. So yeah, probably time to start putting some of that on. Even the upfront month, March at 186. The index is only about 183, but climbing. I don't know. Hey, we've struggled to settle these feeder cattle contracts above 180 actually. So until I see it close above that, it's hard to get that crazy bullish at 186. I'm not a buyer of the feeder cattle market here, and I might be wrong, but it's too high for me to play to the long side.
Hog market, save our favorite for last. This has been a market that's just struggled, DuWayne. It's struggled for months here. I know that Feb contract getting ready to go off the board next week. It's staying pretty close to cash, but the deferreds have just been all over the place. I'm struggling to find something good to say about the hog market. Let's just put it that way. Maybe you have something good to say for me.
No, I'm sorry. I really don't either. I know seasonally we're supposed to have lower production moving forward, but we're not this year. We've got higher numbers and higher production coming. So yeah, look for that February to go off between that 75 and 76. And guess where I think April is going to end up going off? Maybe 72 to 76. And we're at 83 right now. And I know it sounds weird because it's such an ugly chart. And gosh, it should find support. I'm not seeing it, at least not fundamentally. It's actually one of the drags on the cattle market is just how cheap the pork is. So yeah, don't have anything good going there. China's buying a little bit from us, but not enough to save this market, not enough to use up all this extra production we have. So I'm a hedger and a seller of the hog market still, sorry.
Well, and I'd have to think too, chicken wing sales this weekend might take a little bit out of the pork and the beef market too.
I will eat my share and then some, I know for sure.
I suppose, maybe this is the final market question, quote unquote. Who you got this weekend in the game? Eagles, Chiefs.
Well, oh man. Okay, being a Vikings fan, it's hard for me to cheer for the Eagles, but we've got a hometown boy in Dallas Goddard that came from my tiny little town of about 1,200 people. So I'm probably more or less just rooting for one individual player than I am either one of the teams. So we're going to hope Dallas can. I'm more of a blocking guy. I want to see him lay somebody out on the field, but a touchdown would be all right for our hometown boy too.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm going to say I am rooting for Kansas City as I am marrying into a Chiefs family. So that is my answer. That is my official answer here on that one.
That is just a smart man. Smart man. It's already sounding like a good husband. She's already training you well. That's good.
She is training me very well. DuWayne, appreciate the time as always, buddy. If folks want to reach out to you for farm marketing advice and want to talk about their operation, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can call us here directly, 605-448-2365, and they can check us out online at boltmarketingllc.com.
With that, DuWayne Bosse of Bolt Marketing, always a pleasure, sir. Have a great one. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jesse.
That's going to do it for Market Talk today. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great weekend.